our goal today is to make a speed maze. So we're going to make a background with a little maze pattern in it, and we're going to see how fast people can go through it. So we're going to introduce a couple of things. One of those is we're going to introduce some sensing options and the other variables. So let's begin. First thing, I'm going to lose the cat. Poor cat, he always gets lost. And I'm actually today going to begin with my background. So I'm going to go all the way to the right to the stage, and I'm going to paint for the backgrounds. Remember, we're not making a sprite now, we're making a background. So you should over here see backdrops, backdrop one, backdrop two. So I'm going to paint in here. And to do that, I'm going to make up just a solid color. And today's, I'm going to use black. So I'm going to go over here and make a big rectangle. I'm going to fill it with black. And I'm going to make it slightly bigger than the actual backdrop. That way I can do it. So that's as hardcore as this gets, is make a background. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the paintbrush, but I'm going to make the paintbrush quite wide. In this case, I'm going to make it 40 wide. If I go to 40, so 40 wide. I'm going to change the color. I'm going to go with a blue. I'm going to go with a blue kind of in the light range. You don't want it to be too dark because it'll get problems. And I'm looking over here and I'm thinking 40 is way too small. I'm going to bump that all the way up to 80. That gives me a good wide pattern. And I'm going to draw me a maze. My maze doesn't have to be intense. It's going to start at one corner and end at the other corner. Make sure you go before and past. There's my maze. Now, that is the primary path which I'm looking to take. I'm going to add some other software paths. So I'm going to change my thing down to 60. And I'm going to throw in some shortcuts. So there's a shortcut if they want to use it during the maze. Here's another shortcut that kind of stinks. So they can use that. Maybe something that drops down comes around. Doesn't matter because they can go through it. So now I've actually made my background maze. It looks pretty cool. I'm going to clean up a corner here to make that look a little cooler, make people get suckered in going down this short path. Maybe clean this corner out a little bit. Same thing here, so I don't have sharp lines. Whoops. That one I didn't like, so I just Control Z'd it. Maybe. Let's clean it up. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with all my corners. You don't want them going off too soon off the side because the thing can get stuck. So I've made my backdrop. Since I've made something, I'm going to title it. I'm going to call this Speedy Maze. Oops. We'll remove it entitled Speedy Maze. And I've got my basic maze going. So every time I can, I'm going to hit Save Now. Now I'm going to do some programming. We're going to go back to code. So I'm at the code thing. And I have a backdrop, and I can actually put some code in the backdrop. I'm not going to quite do it yet, but I can put some code in the backdrop. First thing I want to do is get a sprite. I'm going to go for a sprite, choose a sprite, and I'm going to pick the baseball. It's pretty close up top. You can use other things. The baseball works well for this. So I'm going to stick in the baseball. And you'll notice my baseball is pretty big. I want it to easily fit in there. So I'm going to change the size by 50%. So now my baseball can easily get through the paths. Not those, but this one. 50 still seems a little big going through my paths. Let's bring it down to 30. Okay, now my baseball is actually fitting pretty well. It can go even the shortcuts. It can fit and make it as I go through. So I'm going to stick my baseball all the way at the start of the maze. And this is so I can use that good starting position. So let's make some code. This code is going to have us going through the maze, but we don't want to allow them to move through the black part of the maze. So we're going to put some stops to that. Anytime the baseball heads toward the black part of the maze, we're just going to reset it. So this program is going to run as soon as they click the green flag, they're going to be ready to go. So let's do our events. And our first one is going to be when the green flag is clicked. Now, this code is going to get a little long on this one, and that's fine. We can do that just fine. So I'm going to clean that up. I'm going to start out when clicked. First thing I want to do is I want the baseball to return to this position every time we play. So that is my motion. And since the baseball is already in its position, it's already going to have the X and Y on there. I'm going to attach that to when clicked. Now, my game is going to involve a loop. I'm going to have it constantly sensing whether the ball is touching the left or touching the black walls, and I'm going to have it sense for the arrows. So I'm going to use the arrow pad to help move through it. So to do that, I'm going to stick in a forever loop. So that's a loop that runs forever. Doesn't mean it can run forever because I can still use the stop all button anytime I want, which I will eventually. But right now, I'm going to have a bunch of if conditions. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check if they're pressing the different keys. So I'm going to go the if conditions. So the if then, and I'm going to stick that inside my forever loop. So what I want to know is the arrow key pressed? And you'll notice there's kind of a weird shape up here with points on each side of it. That's in your sensing operations. You can also find those in the operators, but we're not going there yet. We will use an operator. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sense if they're pressing a key. To do that, I'm going to go for the key. Where's that sucker at? Where is it? Where's my up arrow print? Oh, there it is. Sorry. So the key right there, I'm going to check. Right now it says space. I'm going to change it to the up arrow. So if they press the up arrow, I want the thing to change. Now remember, X and Y axis move left and right. The Y axis move up and down. So up arrow means I want it to go up. I'm going to change the position of it. So that's back to motion. I'm going to use the change position. So change, here it's got X. Remember, X is left and right. With up and down, I want the Y. I'm going to have it change, and I'm going to bring this number down real small to 2. Later on, when you get going, you can change that 2 to something different. Maybe if you wanted to go faster, you change it 3. But I will say if you change it too far, it will pass through walls and then kind of get this weird stuck thing, so it can end really bad. So change 2. So that means if they press the up arrow, this ball should go up, which is good. So I can run my program, and you'll see when I press my up arrow, the ball goes up. It just keeps going up because I don't have it down. But you'll notice it passed right through that black wall. So the first thing I want to do is make sure it can't pass through the black wall. To do that, I'm going to put another if-then statement in there. So I'm going to go back to control. I'm going to grab if-then, and I'm going to put it right below the change by 2. So I've got an if-then inside my if-then. And this one I'm going to sense if they're touching color. So I'm going to go to sensing, and I'm going to look for one touching color. And I'm going to put that in there. Now, the great part about this is I can use the eyedropper tool down here. So I can press this color and go click the eyedropper, go over to my thing, and I pick that perfect black that matches it dead on perfect. Now, if it's touching that color, I want it to bounce back from where it was. So what I want to do is change by Y. I'll go to motion, change by Y, but I want it to go in the opposite direction I expect. Whoops, not set Y. Change by Y. I want it to go in the opposite direction, so I'm going to go -2. So if they bump, it's just going to bump them right back. So that is really the basic for what I'm doing. I'm going to duplicate that section. By that, if I press on that first if part, duplicate it, I'm going to stick it right below the other. So I've got another section at the bottom. Be careful how you're stacking them inside. And this one I'm going to change to down arrow. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see this a little better. So this one I'm going to change to down arrow, which means I'm going to change my Y by -2. And if they're touching black, I'm going to change the Y by 2. So it's going in the opposite direction. And I can run my program now. I like running it. I'm going to hit save too. And I can go up and you'll see that, oops, I forgot to press the green flag. When I go up, it hits the black and stops. I go down, but it hits the black and stops. It'll never let it go past the black because it's constantly sending it back to wherever I started it from. Now I got up and down. I'm going to do the very same things for left and right. I'm going to stick in an if then statement down here, and I'm going to go get a key arrow pressed, which is my down here my sensing. So if they're pressing this key and the key I want now is right, so the right key, if they press the right key, then I want to make X get bigger by 2. So I'm going to do that motion, and I'm going to make X change X by 2. And again, if they're touching the wall, I'm going to put another if statement in there. Yes, I could copy these from the above. I'm just doing this for repetition. I'm going to put an if statement in there that says, hey, if you're touching the color black, so go down here, touching color. I go ahead and click the color, and I get my eyedropper. I hold it over the black and click it. I got a perfect black. If you're touching black, I'm going to change that X by -2. Remember, I can do it 2 ways. I can duplicate it by holding it straight over, but a lot of times that brings a lot with it, and I didn't want all that with it this time, or I can just go get it new. It's kind of how well you are at pushing the button at just the right point. So I'm going to change X by -2. So if they bump into right, it's going to kick it back left. Now I'm going to take that, I'm going to duplicate that section, and I'm going to stick it down here, and I'm going to do left arrow. So left arrow means the X is getting smaller, so -2. And if they hit the wall or hit the black, I want to do a +2. So now I've got a pretty good program. I'm going to hit save now, and I can run. When I press the arrows, he runs. As soon as he hits the wall, he touches, but he runs. I can go up all the way through stuff using my arrows now. Yay! She did the shortcut pretty faster, and I reached the end. So pretty cool. Um, Now, when they reach the end, I really want to stop the game. I want it to stop there. So you'll notice what I'm looking at is the X. The maximum X they can get here is 240. So there's the origin in the middle, which means they can go 240 points to the right before they reach the edge. So when X equals 240, and I can look at that right here by going up here, and you'll notice that X cannot get to 240 right there. It just stuck to 230. That's why I said be careful on the outside. So when X hits 240, I'm going to stop the game. I want to stop the game. So let's go down, and we're going to stick in this one forever loop. We're going to stick a check to see if X got to 240. That's our goal. So we're going to stick in another if then block. So if then, we're going to stick it all the way here at the bottom. So we're going to check a position. To do this one, we need to use some of our math operators because we want to know when X equals 240. So we're going to go to a math operator, and you'll notice it has the little square or the little points on each side. We're going to look for one of those, and we're looking for one that equals the other. And that's right here where it says blank equals 50. That blank will allow me to put another operator in there. So I'm going to grab that one. And now I'm going to go back to sensing, which is where we dealt with all our X positions. And I scroll down a little bit, you'll see that I got stuff X position, Y position, direction. I can actually stick that over here. So as soon as X equals 240, I want the game to stop. To do that, I want to stop all. So I'm going to go to my control and go to that stop all button. If you get to programming later, that's really the break button, and that runs it. So now I've got a pretty good program. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to play again. I'm going to go a different way this time. I'm going to go to that main path that I built. Actually, I like the little side here. And I get to there, and you'll notice that now I can't press any keys anywhere because the game has stopped. Pretty good game. The only problem right now is there's no real way to track what's going on. And I'd really like a timer or something where people can challenge against it. So what I'm going to throw in now is a timer, but I'm going to actually write that code in the backdrop. So I'm going to go to my backdrop and click it, which puts me no code. And I'm going to put a code in there that deals with a timer. Again, I want this to start when the green flag is clicked. And I'm going to create a variable. So down here, variables, There is actually a timer function for this, but when you run it, you really can't stop it or display it effectively. So I'm going to create a variable called timer. To do that, I'm going to go down here to the variables, and I'm going to click make a variable. I'm going to call my variable timer. Okay. So I have a variable called timer. You'll notice it showed up here, and on my screen, I get a little box that says timer. I'm going to find a happy place for timer to hang out where it's in the black, so it's not touching the blue. Remember, we don't want it to break the blue because we want it to literally run through. I kind of like in the middle here. This one, the one I made, actually works pretty well in the middle. So I make a timer. I'm going to set my timer. So I'm going to show the variable. Remember the show and hide. So I'm going to show a variable timer, which it already has here. I'm going to set timer to 0. So here's the set one, and I'm going to go from my variable to timer. I want to set it to 0. So every time the game starts, it's going to show a 0 here. Remember, if you can't see this, check up and make sure timer is checked. Now I'm going to throw in a forever loop because I'm going to make timer count, and which is pretty easy once I show you that. So I'm going to put in a forever loop. I'm going to wait for 1 second. Literally going to leave the wait block for 1 second. And then I'm going to add something to timer. So it'll go from 0 to 1, then 0 to 2. Pretty simple, right? Whoops. And so I go to variables, and I'm going to add or change my variable timer by 1. So literally every 1 second, it'll just pop the timer up. You can actually change that wait 1 seconds to a different time, so your timer isn't necessarily to seconds. If you find everyone is completing this program at the same seconds, throw in wait 0.5 seconds, and the timer is actually measuring every half second there, or measure every tenth of a second, just to see. You get really good difference in numbers for people moving. Now, my game is pretty good. I'm going to hit save again. So it's saved. Then I'm going to go ahead and play it. Actually, I'm going to full screen and play it. So there's my full screen. I'm going to play my game. Here I go. Timers are running. I'm going down here. Now, the great part of this is every maze will have a different time based on itself. So I finished in 10 seconds. That's pretty good for it. Well, that's our Speedy Maze. You can obviously do more things with that. You could make more shapes in the background. You could put little sprites in wherever you wanted that danced. You can make it actually pretty fun. Hope that helps.